Adventures in Odyssey, Mystery of the Broken Heart by Christopher P. N. Maselli. I'm sorry, Emily, Principal Glenn said sternly. You cannot advertise your detective services in Odyssey Middle School. But thanks for coming in before school starts to ask. He placed one hand on Matthew's back, another on mine, and ushered us out of his office. Such is the life of a detective. If you haven't proven yourself, others don't take you seriously. They think you're just playing detective. But the Jones and Parker Detective Agency doesn't play around. Not too much, anyway. Oh, no! Principal Glenn stopped in his tracks. The shriek came from a nearby classroom. Matthew and I sprinted down the hall. Miss Adelaide? I called when we reached the door. Are you all right? Miss Adelaide, the English teacher, was jammed against her desk, a stack of books at her side. Her cheeks had lost all color, and she covered her mouth in horror. No, I'm not being dramatic. That's exactly the scene. I followed her gaze and observed a red carnation on the windowsill, lying in a puddle of water and shattered glass. It's a red carnation, said Matthew, my faithful sidekick. Lying in a puddle of water and shattered glass. My prodigy doesn't miss a thing, I said. I'm your partner, Matthew said. I placed my hand on Miss Adelaide's arm. Her skin was as icy as the roads outside. She turned and looked at me for the first time. Oh, I'm sorry. Her eyes were glassy. My best friend gave me the beautiful heart-shaped vase that held the flower. Who would want to break it? Do you have any enemies? A detective has to ask tough questions sometimes. She bit her lip. I moved toward the vase. Matthew was already there. The flower is plastic, he said. My friend gave it to me because he knew I was allergic to real carnations. I kept the vase filled with water because it sparkled so beautifully with the sunlight. It was so sweet. Now my heart is broken. Don't worry, she was talking figuratively. Sometimes Miss Adelaide gets a little overdramatic, like in that semicolon accident. Don't ask. I hate to say I told you so, Principal Glenn said. That's why I encourage all teachers to leave personal items at home. I touched a piece of the glass. It emitted a rainbow sparkle from the light in the room. It was beautiful. Things like that are just hard to clean, Principal Glenn said, still at the door. I've heard that from the janitorial staff more than once. They don't like personal items either. The principal shivered and said, It's cold in here. He moved to the thermostat. The room is still warming from the three-day weekend. Miss Adelaide said, Wait! Shouted Matthew. We all jumped. Don't turn it. The frost on the window reveals fingerprints. Lots of them. Nice going, Matthew, I cheered. I leaned in and squinted at Matthew's great find. Don't tell me you guys take fingerprints, the principal said. No, I admitted, but I'm putting a fingerprinting kit in the budget. For now, we must glean evidence with our naked eyes. What evidence? That these are small fingerprints, and that's the last bit of evidence we need to solve this mystery. Miss Adelaide's eyes widened. You know who broke my vase? Not only do I know who, but I know why. The culprit, I said, was Jack Frost. Matthew tugged at my sleeve. Who's that? The cold, I said. This vase was filled with water, sitting right beside the window on a 3-day weekend when the school turned the heat way down. Right, Matthew chimed in. When the water drops to 39.2 Fahrenheit, it begins to expand. So the water froze, the ice expanded, and broke the vase. And by the time I arrived today, Miss Adelaide said, the room was warm enough that it had turned to liquid again. Exactly, I said triumphantly. What about the small fingerprints, Principal Glenn said. Doesn't that indicate some kids were involved? Really, the fingerprints only substantiate one thing, I said, and that's that the janitorial staff hasn't been near this vase at all. I think everyone's in the clear. Principal Glenn nodded. How about that? You are detectives. I put an arm around Matthew and said, Jones and Parker Detective Agency at your service. Tell you what, Principal Glenn said. How about if I let you put an ad in the Odyssey Owl after all? Such is the life of a detective. You just have to prove yourself, and sometimes all it takes is a heart-shaped vase, a cold window, and a 3-day weekend. The end. Hope you liked this story. Bye.